And we're live. Good evening, everyone. It is another Thursday night on Silver Nation. And as you can see, I have a different background going on, new change of scenery, but I'm happy to be here with you guys once again. And I am joined by a dear friend of mine, Tim Rabel, and he is the head of ARHE, which is the Association of Recovery and Higher Education. And we are going to talk about what that is, but I think it's so interesting to talk about this topic because a lot of us think about going back to school when we get into recovery, and we have no idea how many resources there are and just how much support there is. So this is pretty much the expert as far as recovery. Collegiate Recovery is concerned. So I'm thrilled to have him on. Hi, Tim. How are you tonight?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So let's dive right in. What is Collegiate Recovery? Can you tell us like what this is all about? And I know it's been going on for a few years, but again, a lot of the folks watching may not know what it is. So can you tell us what it is?
Sure. Yeah. So the term collegiate recovery essentially refers to support services on college campuses for students like first generation students or international students or LGBTQ students or even like student athletes. So in this case, it's providing the services that students in recovery might need, like meetings and housing accommodations and support from staff and space for the meetings and social activities and things like that. So yeah, it's on any kind of college campus, whether it's a community college or a large state school or a small liberal arts school or a HBCU, which is a historically black college or university. So yeah, it has all sorts of different shapes and sizes.
Which I know you guys have been working super hard to expand, the number of schools that you guys are working with. And also just when you think about how what we call recovery hostile colleges are, right? Like you think of schools and you think of party schools.
Yeah.
You don't think they're very conducive to recovery to learn. So to learn that there are programs and people who are supportive of individuals being in recovery. Like now, if you're in recovery, you do have somewhere to go, you do have support, and you even have scholarships, where we're going to get into in just a sec. And also, just so you guys are aware, I am at a location with new Wi-Fi, so we may freeze up. So I just ask that you guys are patient with me. If we do freeze, just hang out. We will be back. So just kind of putting that out there. But in the meantime, I do want to say hi to everybody checking in. Hi, Geraldine. So happy to have you with us again. Hi, Roy. Hi, Augustine. And hi, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us. So what are some of the benefits, in your opinion, of somebody in recovery attending college? And, what are some of the scholarship opportunities, like I just mentioned?
Yeah. So with the benefits, I mean, at one point it's a lot of the benefits of just seeking to further your education, right? I mean, just if you have something specific that you want to go back to school for, or go to school for in general, just that general experience, but kind of like being a student in recovery and being able to persevere through, generally years of what kind of is like a battle. I mean, that does a lot for kind of like your recovery capital to be able to, make it through and get to the commencement stage eventually and things like that. And as far as scholarships, yeah, there's seems to be a few more organizations than we had in the past who are giving out scholarships to students in recovery. We actually made a post on our Facebook page maybe a week ago or so on the ARHE Facebook page that had like a link of a bunch of lists, rather, of a bunch of different links. So there's some prominent ones. I think the Ammon Foundation is kind of becoming, really well known. I was on their advisory board for a year or two, and yeah, there's a lot of funding opportunities for students to go to school or go back and continue their education while still being in recovery.
and I know we just got into a conversation about finding a purpose in recovery and
Yeah.
finding a hobby or
Yeah.
something to replace your addiction. So one could say that education could be one of those things that sort of give you a purpose and give you something to do now that you have all this free time.
Yeah.
It sort of serves as that reason to stay clean and sober. And can you talk? And I know this wasn't in the list of questions, but I sort of freestyle. But
Sure. Yeah.
can you talk about like just the self-esteem aspect of going to school and what it does for your recovery?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it can almost be, I was thinking about this before too. It can almost be like a double-edged sword. So I think um, sometimes what I've seen and even like what I experienced was kind of both sides of this spectrum. So a lot of times we'll see like an early recovery where an individual might think that their ceiling is like really low. Like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do
Right.
that. I'm never going to amount to anything. And that's dangerous. And it's not true. Like, I think one of the cool things about recovery is that we find out, a lot of the sayings like the lost dreams reawaken and, new doors open and that kind of stuff. So I think there's that piece, but then there's also the other side of the coin where a lot of things start going right, and you kind of get a little bit of like an ego in recovery and think you can kind of like take on a whole bunch. But to your question about self-esteem, yeah, I mean, it takes just to like go through the juggling act of school and work and interning and your recovery. That does quite a bit. And everyone's story and path is different, obviously, but yeah, I think it does quite a bit for someone's self-esteem.
Yeah, I agree. And I think someone just commented about getting behind on student loans and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls of, joining school and some of the challenges someone may face when they first, encounter going back to school and maybe some of the things they can do? And again, I know we're kind of jumping around in the questions, but
Sure. Yeah.
we want to stay real time and relevant in the conversation. So, what would you say to someone who's like, listen, I can't afford student loans. So, what do I do in my case? I'm going to go back to school.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so a few different thoughts come up. Like one, like college isn't necessarily the best fit for everyone, and that's not to say that someone's like not good enough for it or anything. It's really about. I mean, look at some of the most successful like CEOs we have like in the country, especially in like the tech world. They flat out like dropped out after freshman year. It's not necessarily the best fit for everyone. So one, I think it's to not try and fit into some like cookie cutter mold of what you need to do in life. So like assess that, I think is the first thing I would say. And then the second piece is to not discount any kind of education. Like I said, it doesn't have to be some really well off private school. Like there's plenty of good education opportunities online or in your local town at a community college. And then the third piece, going back to what we said, look for the scholarship opportunities. Like I was really fortunate. I would not have gone to the school I went to if I didn't have scholarship opportunities. Like my parents were pushing me to stay at home in Delaware and kind of stay local where my recovery network was. And, I moved down to DC because I had, really fortunate scholarship. So I think looking at that, and then again, just kind of, easier said than done, but thinking about like where you want to go in life and like what's needed to get there and, kind of make that decision.
Yeah, and there's also like trade schools
Yeah.
and things that are still education, but not necessarily like private school, as you
Yeah.
mentioned.
Yeah.
So, what can people expect from recovery communities, and what are recovery communities all about? I know you touched a little bit on it, but what can someone expect when they encounter a recovery community within an academic institution?
Yeah. So, collegiate recovery programs and communities, I think the number one thing you can expect is, what you just said, like community. Like you're gonna find that group of students that make you, kind of rethink everything. Like when I came down to DC for school as a freshman, I thought I was going to, be met with all these like students in recovery waiting for me, and that didn't happen. And so like eventually when I finally found this group of students in recovery and we were doing all sorts of stuff together, it really kind of just changed the whole kind of landscape. Um, you might be frozen. I'll keep talking until you tell me to otherwise. But yeah, aside from the community piece, I mean, the support aspect, having meetings on campus with other students in recovery and, being able to connect with staff and faculty about it as well, I think is really key. And then I think just like options and accommodations, like there's staff there to help you with housing.
Guys.
You still there? Maybe not.
My Wi-Fi is not performing. I hope you guys can still see him and can still hear him. If you are having a hard time seeing us, okay, Jimmy just commented that I just shut down. Let's try something again. Okay, good. Emma, you're hearing everybody? Both? Okay, perfect. I can't see Tim, so this is going to be tricky. So I'm hoping that he gets back on. But I'm glad you guys can hear me and Tim again, even though I can't hear him. Okay, Jimmy, thank you. Okay, good. You can hear both of us. Again, I can't see him, so hopefully, thank you, Brittany. Okay, so hopefully, Tim, you can hear me. If you can, just again, bear with me. It's my first time at this location. Gosh, I wish I could see him and hear him. But if you can hear me, Tim, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. You probably can't hear me though.
I'm gonna text them. Sorry, you guys. You can hear me. Okay, perfect. So, if you can hear me, what are some of the mistakes you've watched students in recovery make?
Yeah, so sorry, I'm texting her back too so we can communicate. So some of the mistakes that I think,
and you guys are all gonna have to help me,
that I've seen students make, it's kind of what I was going back to in the previous one, where I think either kind of undercommit or overcommit. So either you're afraid to jump into too much and take on anything, thinking they might not be like kind of set up for it or good enough or something like that. Or on the flip side, like overcommitting. Like that's absolutely what I did most of college. Like taking a full course load and interning and also working part-time and, just juggling way too much, and then kind of crashing and burning and, letting meetings go to the wayside and not calling my sponsor enough and stuff like that. So I think that kind of sums up the two sides. It's, either, not thinking we're cut out for enough, or, taking on too much. We'll text her and say I'm done.
So what are some of, like if someone is thinking about attending school, what are some of your tips?
Yeah, another great question. So I would do a lot of research and especially talk to people like in your recovery network who have maybe done the same thing. So folks in meetings. I mean, I was really fortunate to have meetings like right on campus, essentially in DC, and there was people from the school community or local throughout Washington, who I could talk to about continuing on with school, or if school was like the right fit, or if I should transfer, different things like that. Um, Also doing a lot of the research online, not necessarily like reviews, but for example, if someone's like early in recovery, and so give me as an example, if I was early in recovery and I was going to go back to school somewhere, especially like moving away from home, I would probably look online to see if they have like recovery support services. So I knew before going to that school that I'd be set up with, other students in recovery and maybe housing options, and, just have that community there before I even got there. So I didn't have to fight that battle of finding peers in recovery as well as dealing with education. So that's probably some of the places I would start.
Awesome. Those are great tips. And can you tell us more about ARHE and the work that you guys do?
Yeah. So it's just ARHE. Our name's the Association of Recovery and Higher Education. So we're a nonprofit membership association. So some other associations you might know would be like the NCAA. So they're kind of representing all the different collegiate athletic programs throughout the country. We're representing collegiate recovery programs, which are, like we talked about, kind of set up just for students in recovery from addiction. So they're what we do is kind of provide the membership options for them. So we have over 130 schools who are members. I'm the only full-time staff member, and really what we're trying to do is get collegiate recovery programs on campuses throughout the country, and maybe global one day, and really do what we can to support students in recovery and provide professional development opportunities for them, and really just kind of push this whole thing forward so that college students have access to the support services that they need to kind of succeed. And
So, real quick, I just want to go to the comments. Thank you, Emma, for your tips. And Jimmy also said living a balanced life has been the key for him. One of the challenges for Emma was overcommitting. And yeah, I appreciate everybody in the comments helping us out as we go through our technical difficulties. So thank you so much for being patient with us. And can you name, Tim, some of the ARHE schools that we may not be familiar with? What are some of the schools that are involved with your program?
yeah, so like you mentioned, they're all members, so we don't really have like chapters. They're all independent institutions that elected to join the association as members. So the first school was actually Brown University in Rhode Island in 1977. Some of the older ones today are like Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Kennesaw State down in Georgia, Rutgers University in New Jersey, and then here in Minneapolis, where I am, Augsburg University is actually one of the oldest programs. Typically, you'll see a lot of like the large state schools. So Penn State, Ohio State, University of Michigan, University of Texas. There's quite a bit on the West Coast, like throughout California. You have like UC Santa Barbara, UCLA, up and down the West Coast. But really, it's kind of like in the Midwest, over down the East Coast, and into the South. So we have a lot of schools in the South, like Mississippi State, Alabama, a handful of schools in Florida, University of South Carolina, and a good bit of community colleges on the horizon too. Community College of Philadelphia, a couple in New Jersey, Northampton Community College, handful of MSIs, which are minority serving institutions. So we have like North Carolina A&T, and a couple others, I think, in the South. So yeah, there's a lot. We can kind of list them all, but they're all on our website. The ones who are our members at collegiaterecovery.org.
Okay, awesome. So you guys have an annual conference, and Your conference is coming up in a week. Can you tell us more about that event and where it's going to be held and who is it for and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so it's our 10th national conference, which is pretty wild to think about. My first one was out here in Minnesota at Augsburg, which one of the schools I just mentioned. So 5 years ago. So our conference is cool because we do it in conjunction with a couple other groups. So we work with the Association of Recovery Schools. They have recovery high schools around the country, which are literal high schools just for students who are in recovery, and then also alternative peer groups, APGs. So it's kind of this combined conference where we get hundreds and hundreds of people from across the country gathered really to talk about recovery support services for young people, really. So it's up in Boston, June 29th to July 2nd. It's kind of split actually between Boston and Cambridge. We have Boston University, and then right across the river is the Hyatt in Cambridge, and we have kind of sessions at both because the conference has grown quite a bit. So we have a lot of students, a lot of college staff, a lot of treatment providers, a lot of families or government officials, advocates, all sorts of people come out to the conference. Every day we're getting like another dozen registrations, and it's really exciting to see it all come together. So yeah, it's a really great group of folks that we're able to pull in.
And really quickly, I want to go to the comments. Brittany says she's been getting her GED and attending driver's ed class. I think, again, education and just finding a purpose and trying to right your wrongs is just a great way to, again, stay sober and have a purpose to continue to work on your recovery. And again, thank you to everyone commenting and also being patient for these technical difficulties that we are having. And I appreciate you guys also going back and forth and supporting one another. I know a couple of people are chiming in about the 2 weeks, someone being sober for 2 weeks. So you guys are the best. So back to the ARG conference. Can you tell us, Tim, if anyone can attend? And if so, what can they expect if they're just a student in recovery or thinking about going to school? Can they attend, and what can they expect from the event?
Great question again. Yeah, there's all sorts of different kind of rates. It's definitely open to everyone. We have student rates, member rates, non-member rates, different things like that. If you want to attend for just a day, you can do that as well. You can feel free to email me. I can kind of put it in the comments section, but the email is tim.rabolt, R-A-B-O-L-T, at collegiaterecovery.org, or you can follow me on Twitter, message me there. But yeah, as far as what to expect, it's if you've been to other conferences, kind of like in the addiction space, at least what I never really felt the same kind of like sense of community and support that I get at this conference. There's not too many that are really focused on the actual aspect of recovery support, and I think this one really does, and that's what drew me to the organization, all those years ago when I was still a student in recovery at George Washington. So there's a ton of content. I think that's the best piece, is that the sessions are packed, and we have presenters from across the country who are presenting on incredible things like developing the programs on their campus, or maybe some like broader topics around leadership or dealing with eating disorders and addiction recovery at the same time. Some of the keynotes we have are great. The entertainment options are great. There's just a lot. There's good food, good sites, good company. It's really a fun time, and gets me all fired up and excited just talking about it. So hope to see some of you up in Boston next weekend.
Awesome. And where can they learn more about you and ARHE? Where can they go?
Yeah, so the best would be our new website is collegiaterecovery.org. You can also Google Collegiate Recovery or ARHE. We should pop up. You could follow us on Twitter at College Recovery. Collegiate Recovery was a little too long for the Twitter account handle lengths. You can follow me on Twitter as well at Tim Rabold, and I think on our website I probably have like my bio up there, so you can do that or email me, connect with me online. Happy to answer questions and talk about this stuff more. Okay, don't know if she got this last text, so I'll send it again.
Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us tonight. I know you're super busy with the conference coming up, but again, I thought it was so important to talk about the resources that are available, especially for people who want to go to school, and who are thinking again about finding a purpose. And now that they're sober, like, now what? They're trying to figure out what to do with themselves,
Right.
and to replace like one habit for something positive. So thank you so much again. And if you guys are in the Boston area, consider attending. And you know the deal. We're always here. If you guys have any ideas for future topics, we're always listening. And, just let us know if there's any other way we can support you. And again, thank you so much, Tim. We appreciate you. And that's going to be it for us tonight. I appreciate all of you hanging in there with technical difficulties and helping us out. And we will see you guys next week. Bye.